Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every miniseries, we chart a course through the full filmography of an underdiscussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Ben Affleck, and today we take to the streets of Charlestown for his second film, The Town, and try to do a podcast before our past catches up with us, on this side or the other. Nick, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Go Sox.
Go Sox. Which car we taking? The Boston accents are back, and they're, man, we're not more. I guess you can't be more than Gone Baby Gone, but it is a lot more actors doing Boston accents.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there is one way to go bigger with the Boston accents than Gone Baby Gone, and The Town does it.
Yeah, though Titus Welliver, much smaller, no mustache.
I'm glad we mentioned it already, because I was thinking about it too. I was like, oh man, I kind of miss it, but also I could take him so much more seriously now. Weirdly though, his character is Italian-American. They call him Dino the Dago, which hurts a little bit. I take those things a little bit to heart. But like, you're casting Titus Welliver and you're not going to have him play like an Irish guy?
Yeah, I don't know.
When you've got other people, I don't know.
He's got the accent going on, regardless.
It's not bad. Well, his, I sort of believe him as an Italian-American. I definitely believe him as a Bostonian.
Yeah, he's got the Boston accent pretty much down in it.
I think I just really like that guy.
Yeah, I think he really likes him too. Jon Hamm, I think, is the only one who's not doing like a constant Boston accent, though he does do his little run on it at one point when he's like making fun of them at whatever point. He slips into a Boston accent.
I didn't want to laugh at that, but I totally laughed at that. Yeah, Jon Hamm is smug as fuck in this movie, and that is the Jon Hamm that I like.
Smug as fuck? You mean Don Draper?
Yeah, and I watched like one episode of Mad Men. We were just talking about our friend Brian, who was on the show last week, and he doesn't like things with unlikable characters.
Yeah.
And I saw the pilot of that show, and I was like, this is all unlikable characters. I can do it in a movie. I can't do it in a series. And
I think you would fucking love Mad Men.
My wife loved it. She told me that too. But I couldn't get past episode 1.
There's a lot of likable people in Mad Men, though. He is not. I mean, you'll even go to like him because he's just so fascinating in it. But like Elizabeth Moss's character and some other characters, you'll genuinely like them.
Well, anyway, as far as Jon Hamm goes, I'm not a big fan, but I do enjoy his, like, when he is playing this kind of part, I'm a big appreciator of him.
My ultimate, other than obviously Don Draper, Jon Hamm in that Fletch movie that came out a couple of years ago.
Oh, I've been wanting to see that. That's
so
been on
good.
my list since it came out. Really?
Yeah, so good. The movie is like really a lot of fun, and is just, it's a movie that you absolutely would be like, oh, it's on TBS, and I'll just sit down for an afternoon and watch it with commercials because it's just really enjoyable. And Jon Hamm is just really good. He's really good at being, charming and a little bit smug, but also a little bit funny. And it's much more in line with like the book Fletch than, it's not the Chevy Chase Fletch, which is like, voices and a million, just
that's
the wit on him.
Like the Chevy Chase Fletch is like a sacred text to me.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That is one of my favorite characters of all time. So I'm sure Jon Hamm does a good job, and I'm sure it's a fine movie. It's just
very different. It's very different. It's so different that the good thing about it is it's so different, you wouldn't be like, well, this is like a bad impression of the Chevy Chase.
No,
Fletch.
I wouldn't have expected that. It's just, I'd rather bring Chevy Chase back at like 80 years old and have him do another one.
No, don't bring Chevy Chase anywhere near a camera anymore.
Or another person.
Or another person. I mean, he had a chance to do it twice, and the second time was absolutely terrible. So, but we're not here to talk about, I love that first movie. Don't get me wrong. I love that first movie. But we're not here to talk about Chevy Chase or Fletch. We're here to talk about The Town, Ben Affleck's second movie, the 2010 film, The Town. It's based on a Chuck Hogan novel, which he was preemptively optioned by Paramount. Chuck Hogan is one of the, we're opposite of what we were last week when we were talking about Gone Baby Gone, which is Chuck Hogan this is all he does, is he either does books that sell before they're even published, or he just writes books with other famous people and they end up turning into things. It's like his biggest work is The Strain, which is the thing he did with Guillermo del Toro, which is a comic and then was a TV show. That's sort of the world he lives in, is that world. This is a solo novel. It's called The Prince of Thieves. Is that what it's called?
So they were making a movie called that.
No.
Sorry, that title is taken. And honestly, he knew that when he was writing that.
Of course. Yes, of course. The town is a better name anyway.
It is. Well, sure it is.
Because the Prince of Thieves is not really a good name for whatever this story
and through the whole movie, I was trying to figure out, like, is he talking about Duck McCrae? Is he the Prince of Thieves?
I think that's what my guess.
And what is so princely about him?
I think because he's sort of like nice. You know? He's all right. The book did win the 2005 Hammett Prize for mystery crime fiction. He was originally developed for Adrian Lyne, Flashdance, Fatal Attraction, Jacob's Ladder, obviously a major director in the 80s and 90s.
And could have probably used something like this at that point.
How long is this after what's the Diane Lane cheating movie?
Unfaithful. I think
Unfaithful.
It was like 2002 or so.
So it's a good amount after that. I mean, I don't know how quickly it went into development. I guess the book comes out in 2003. If the book is optioned 2003, maybe he's working on it directly after.
It seems like a very unsexy story for an Adrian Lyne.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm assuming it would have got a little sexier if Adrian Lyne had directed it.
It definitely would have, but it would have been kind of forced. Like,
yes.
I don't know. This doesn't feel like an Adrian Lyne movie.
No.
But I do like, just kind of reading a little bit about the backstory of this. I mean, this was supposed to be a much longer, even when Ben Affleck got a hold of this a couple of years later, this was supposed to be something like The Irishman, like a 4-hour epic crime thriller. And I don't know. I mean, there is a director's cut. Like, you watched the theatrical version.
Yes, correct? I watched the normal cut. Whatever I could rent on iTunes.
Well, I think they are both available, but I saw the theatrical cut, obviously, in the theater when it came out.
Yeah, me too.
Second viewing just now. I figured just go with that one again. And I think it does everything it needs to in 2 hours and 5 minutes. Like, I don't know that, like, some movies I want to see more, and some movies I think it's good as is.
I think you can feel a little bit of that old version of the movie within this movie in some ways, just in some of the storylines and stuff that sort of get either short shrift or get closed off quickly, or something that are hinted at. Like, you know, we were talking at the beginning about the Titus Welliver character and how he has this connection to the community, but he kind of went against them. You know, he only has like 2 scenes where he speaks basically in the movie. And you could imagine a movie where he's a bigger part, right, of the movie, where the florist is a bigger part. The Pete Postlethwaite character is a bigger part of the movie, where the Chris Cooper character is a bigger part of the movie, right?
One of my favorite actors, Chris Cooper, I forgot he was even in this. I actually forgot most of the cast of this.
Me too. I forgot a lot of it. Yeah.
It's like, oh, Blake Lively, right? She's pretty important in this movie.
The Blake Lively character as well has like basically a scene at the very beginning and a scene at the very end, and then she's kind of not in the movie for most of the middle of the movie.
But I disagree with the idea that it's like, I feel like the one scene, you know, Chris Cooper is in that one scene. It's incredible, and then he's gone from the movie, and I actually don't mind it here. Like, I think,
I don't mind
the editing job that they did to bring it down. I mean, credit that to Affleck, right? I think his cut was something like pretty close to 4 hours too, according to him. I don't know if anyone's seen that cut, but I think the one they had was 250, and whatever they cut out of that, I think works just fine. Like, there's nothing like, you can tell. Yeah, I agree. It kind of shows that there was maybe a little bit more to some of those plot lines, some of those characters, but I got my sense of Titus Welliver's character from this. I got my sense of the relationship between Blake Lively's character and Affleck's character.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I actually think it works better as a tighter movie. So.
Sorry, I wasn't meaning to say, like, I think it would have been better as a longer movie, but I can see the...
Fair enough.
I can see this, like, the tendrils of what you're talking about, which is more of like an epic crime story about the city and about all these characters having more of a place in the larger tapestry of the story. Maybe some of the more of the history of the family.
Like 30 or 40 more minutes of aerial shots of Charlestown, where we're flying around that same monument that we see, like, for the vast majority of the running time of this week. So we're 2 movies deep in Ben Affleck, and director trademarks. That's one of them, is aerial shots that are kind of endless and don't need to be there as much as they are.
Yeah, there's a lot of aerial shots for sure.
So many other ways to build atmosphere. And look, seeing this one, I'll lay my cards on the table right now. I think I'm a pretty big Ben Affleck as a director fan. I mean, you know my thoughts on Gone Baby Gone, but like, I remembered liking this movie, and it's like, there's a good chance it's going to hold up, and I think it really held up. So
I think it holds up
I'm
really well.
Pretty happy with them thus far, and I love Argo as well.
Me too. I think that my pitch or my thesis on this movie is that it's like the platonic ideal of the movie of the cable movie, not movies that was made for cable, but a movie that you watch on cable, which is that it's constantly entertaining. Like there's no moment where it's boring, right? It's got good but big performances, right? All the performances are big. We're not dealing with subtlety in the performances here. It has enough going on underneath the surface where it's not a dumb movie, right? But it's shallow enough that you could get up and go make a sandwich or switch the laundry around and come back, and you could still be like, I understand what's going on in the movie, right? I don't say this as a ding at all. I think we've talked about this many times, probably more than people would like to hear on the show, about movies like this that don't get made very much anymore. This is really the last era where this stuff is happening. So it cost $37 million to make. It made $92 million domestically. It made like 160 or 170 worldwide total. It more than like quadrupled its budget, right? It was a big, solid hit. And I think that it really is just purely entertaining. And I really enjoyed that. Like I was just sitting there last night having a ball watching this movie. And I think that to me, this is also the ideal of a Ben Affleck character and performance in a movie, right? I think he directs himself and gives himself the right character here, where he can bring sort of all the things that he's good at to bear and sort of leave behind some of the stuff that he's not as good at in the rear view.
That's interesting, because I actually think Ben Affleck as an actor, I think, is the weak link in this movie.
Oh, really?
I think he's the worst out of a very, very good cast, and some of them are non-professionals, but I like and believe them as well. But yeah, just in terms of what this movie is, like, this reminded me of the stuff that I grew up on, right? Like cable movies, VHS movies, the stuff my dad and I would go once a week to the movies when I was a kid, and it was always stuff like this. They made a lot of these mid-budget sort of adult-oriented crime pictures. I loved this stuff. I love cop movies. I love crime dramas. There was a lot of those back then. And, they had that kind of urban grit about them. But there was also a little bit of a safe kind of thing with them.
Yes,
They were
absolutely.
Even something like Michael Mann's Heat, right? Like, that's not a shocking movie in any way. It's a very good, like, maybe Heat is like the best example of what those movies are. You've got great actors and a very pulpy sort of plot. And yeah, like, we don't see them. And even in 2010, when this came out, there weren't as many of them.
No.
And a lot of them were like January releases. Like, there's one I've still been meaning to see. I forget the name. I think it's called like Sleepless or something. And it's Jamie Foxx. And of course, my favorite in the whole world is Michelle Monaghan is the co-star of that one. I think it's just after Gone Baby Gone. And it got terrible reviews. But I was like, that looks like a kind of movie I would really enjoy if I just sat down and watched it.
Yeah. And the safeness is also a thing, absolutely, that I think is a big part of this. Which is that, and again, I said this doesn't really happen anymore, because now you can choose whatever you want to watch whenever you want to watch it, right? But this is the kind of movie that if I was sick at home and just laying in bed and I was just like scrolling through channels and this was on, I'm like, oh, yeah, perfect. This is exactly what I want to watch, right? And it is very Heat-esque, right? In a lot of ways. It obviously, Affleck isn't visually as interesting a filmmaker as Michael Mann is. Michael Mann is a master at this kind of thing and is able to elevate these things even just a little bit beyond, right, what Affleck is doing here.
But this is a little bit less of a movie than Heat. I mean, Affleck is more interested in, like I said, that sort of urban grit, that atmosphere. This does have a little bit of the same. It's not as good at that as Gone Baby Gone is, but it does have a lot of local color. There's a lot of local people that are cast here. Obviously, if the climax of the movie is going to be set at Fenway Park, we've got some real Boston stuff going on.
I was so happy. I forgot that completely. I forgot.
Oh, no, that was literally all I remembered about the movie. That and Jeremy Renner being so good in it. So I was like, this is kind of like a new. And I literally have not seen it since it came out, and and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah,
but you said it before, and I think it's worth saying again. Like, I agree with you on all this stuff, but I think it's a little bit better of a movie than that gives it credit for. And I know you're not saying that it's a bad movie in some sense.
No, that's not a criticism for me at all.
Or trashy or something like that, or low quality. I think it's a very, very good example of that. And it does have a little bit of some of the things that I liked so much about Gone Baby Gone in it. Like it has that sort of classic noir spirit about it a little more than those films sometimes did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it bums me out. Like, not that I mean, I would watch this if it was a TV miniseries, but this is absolutely an 8-episode streaming TV miniseries now.
For
Like,
sure.
you'll never see a movie like The Town, or at least not anytime soon. And
No.
I do miss this kind of stuff. I agree with you very much there.
This has got Apple TV series written all over it.
Yeah.
What this has got written. I'm not sure it'll
And
be
you get
good.
the exact same cast. Yeah, it would look
Yes.
just as good. They probably spend more money on it. Like, it's crazy how things have changed.
You get a whole flashback episode with like Chris Cooper's character, but younger. You know, you'd see like that's exactly what you'd get, right? And that's what I mean by kind of the feeling of what we were talking about. This kind of crime epic is still, you can still kind of see the echoes in the movie, because you can get the sense that like there was a world where you got like a cold open of the movie that was like 30 years ago or something, you know, and it really started to paint the tapestry of this town, and not just those kind of opening words at the beginning explaining what Charlestown is.
Right, yeah, the quote from an interview, you'd probably just have the interview. You do a few of them.
Exactly,
you do like a little documentary segment. Yeah.
I do love that one of the quotes attributed to Charlestown man. It's like,
well, he didn't want to give his name.
Absolutely not. I guess not.
There's probably people looking for him.
So this movie is about a group of bank robbers. Basically, they're low level, kind of friends since they were kids, group of people from this Charlestown neighborhood in Boston, and they knock off banks and armored trucks, and the bank that
this
they knock.
Is what you do. Let's go back to those quotes, because I think it's important. Charlestown, the town, is known as a place, and you know, the first time I saw this movie, I thought they just totally made that up.
Right,
like,
it feels like it.
It's like the capital is the armed robbery capital of America or something like that. And then in the end credits, there's this great credit that's like, it's this very wishy-washy thing. Like, yes, it is true that this happens in Charlestown, but we also want to thank the people of Charlestown that are wonderful people, and most of them are law-abiding. Like, I forget exactly what the title was, but it made me laugh. Yeah. At the end of this movie, which, you know, we'll get to the ending, but I thought that was kind of a unique thing to see, where they're saying such bad things about this place. Oh, wait, we don't really mean it, but also we kind of do.
Yeah. Well, Ben Affleck's both of his Boston movies are like, looking, guys, this place is hell.
Yeah.
It's just crime everywhere. So this town, this Charlestown produces like the most bank robbers per capita in America, or whatever they say at the beginning. And they're knocking off a bank at the very beginning, and they take hostage this woman because the silent alarm gets tripped and they want to have her as insurance. One of the bank robbers really doesn't want it to happen. The other one seems like he really does, and whatever. They drop her off at the beach, and then we learn about them, and it's this group, Ben Affleck, Jeremy Renner's character, a couple other people. Basically, Ben Affleck's character becomes romantically entangled with Rebecca Hall, who plays the woman they kidnapped from the bank. And the movie basically follows this path of, will he get to stay with this woman that he kidnapped and has been lying about it? You know, against this idea of this neighborhood that's constantly pulling him back, these friends that are constantly pulling him back, that want to keep doing jobs. And basically,
which is a really interesting thread that runs through this movie, right? Like,
yes.
So they immediately, Jon Hamm is an FBI agent, and Titus Welliver is his partner. They are like, he's not from there, but Titus Welliver's character is. They immediately sort of like catch the scent of these guys. They want to solve this case because it's high profile, and because they just had enough of this shit, I guess, and are just sort of dead set on catching these guys. So there's all this scrutiny on them. Plus, there's a witness that's just out in the world now, and they discover in the next scene that she lives in Charlestown. She's a toonie, which is like a townie, but somebody who comes from out of town, like a yuppie, basically. And the townies don't like her, and she kind of doesn't fit in there. But she lives like basically right in their neighborhood, so they're afraid they're going to see her. So with all of that going on, still there's all these jobs that keep coming up, and they continue, like, it's their career, right? It's their regular thing that they do. And, you know, they do, as in movies all the time, they progressively get bigger in scale until they're knocking off fucking Fenway Park at the end of the movie. Which
it all leads to big heist.
So ill-advised. Like, you know, these characters are criminals. They make bad decisions, but still throughout that whole setup of that, I'm like, why would you do that? That sounds terrible. This is just the
Yeah.
worst idea ever. But I
Yeah.
do love, that romance that's kind of at the center of this movie is such a perfect noir idea, right? Like the thought that he's kind of leading a double life. They obviously, he falls for her in a sincere way. She falls for him, even though she's, he won't let her come to his apartment, whatever. She doesn't know it
Yeah.
was him. He was wearing
No.
a scary skeleton mask
Hmm.
in the bank. So
Yeah.
she's not aware that it was him. But this, will they or won't they? Is he going to reveal it to her? And then at the same time, while she is like getting maybe closer and closer to figuring out that he is the guy, the FBI is just on his ass the entire time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's just this wonderful sort of ticking clock thing that this film does. And like I said, really captures, I think, the spirit, of a different thread of noir than we saw in Gone Baby Gone. But it's a great follow-up. I mean, I don't think this is as good of a movie because that's one of my favorite movies, but it does a lot of the same things really well. And I think it really is, we were talking about that one as being so successful as a genre piece. And I think this is a really, really great genre piece also. And it's the same genre.
I agree. I mean, it's a slightly different genre, right? Because it's much more of an epic and much more of, I would say, action. It's not an action movie, but it has much more action in it, right? It is about.
It has a few action scenes, but I don't know that I definitely think it's more of a noir than anything else. It's not the investigatory thread of noir. It's the sort of likable character who's in over his head, and we know the walls are going to close in on him at the end, and then that's why I don't love the ending of this. But
I
do
guess
think it's
because there's no mystery. That's the reason why I don't put it in the same bucket as Gone Baby Gone, right? There's no actual mystery going on.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, The Big Sleep and Double Indemnity are both noirs, but they are different types of movies.
Yeah, they are absolutely 100%. Yes, of course they are. But I guess for me, it didn't feel exactly that way. But so the opening scene is this bank robbery scene, right? And it's pretty much there to give you a peek into who basically our top two characters are very quickly, right? The difference between the Jeremy Renner character and the Ben Affleck character. One of them, obviously the brains behind the situation. One of them level-headed, seems like really just wants the money. The other one seems much more like, if I hurt people, I don't really care, right? Like I'm a little bit more of a live wire. I'm a little bit more of a problem. Like maybe I have some sociopathic tendencies
really nicely
to me.
done too. Just before we even go past, sorry, I'm hung up on the opening scene. I think the opening scene is great.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing we always see, where it's some guys sitting in a dark room discussing plans for the heist, and Ben Affleck's character Doug is just breaking things down. It's all about armored cars, right? Like that's what mostly gets knocked off in this movie. They're robbing the bank when they're making the exchange, and he's like telling you about the two guys that are driving the car, and this one was a Boston police officer for however many years, whatever. This is his name, and he kind of goes through this whole thing, and he's like, all right, so if we see a helicopter, we're fucked. If you see a car, just shoot out the engine block, whatever. And then Renner's character just has to interject there, right? Jim.
Yeah, Gem.
He has to say, well, these guys are making $10 an hour. So if they want to give up their lives for that, don't get in their way. Like right away, we know exactly who he is. That plays out exactly, not in that scene precisely like that. It plays out later in the movie, but we can kind of see, in just this couple of minutes of setup and this initial heist sequence, which is cut really nicely. It's the better version of the one we saw in Destroyer from Ken Kusama.
Yes,
reminded me a lot of that, but just more fun, more interesting.
Yeah, and I love the very beginning. There's
so much character development in just that.
There's some stylistic flourishes I really like too. I love the way they set it up. Right, they're in the van, they put the masks on, they bust out, and then you cut to this security cam footage,
silent,
that has no audio.
Yes, and love it.
And the moment, I should look up who edited the movie. I don't know if it was in your doc or not.
Dylan Tishner, who also did Gone Baby Gone.
Okay, Dylan Tishner. There's just this great choice. Obviously, you're going to cut from the silent footage to the footage with sound, right? That's going to happen. But the moment he chooses to make that cut is so effective because it's it's mid motion, and it's in the moment where there's it's not the moment where there's a gunshot or something. They're just kind of crashing through a door, basically. But because it goes from silence to just them crashing through the door, it has this really big impact.
It's almost like a jump scare. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also put into the mindset of the people in the bank, right? Where it's like, things are completely fine. They're idyllic. Everything's going great. Normal day, boring day. And then boom, right? We are into chaos, and these people's lives are going to be upended for for 10 minutes or whatever it is.
There's a couple great moments of subtle comedy in this movie, and there's one in this scene where some guy just comes to the bank, like they chain the doors like bank robbers always do, and there's just this one dude we never even see him. He's like, are you guys open? He's like knocking on the door.
They're just kind of looking, waiting. There's a great moment too, which is just one of those things where it's just so like, okay, this movie is shot in 2009, right? Coming out in 2010, where they say, okay, everybody, throw all your Blackberries on the ground.
Yes. And honestly, it took me a minute. I was like, what the fuck is a Blackberry?
Yeah. And I'm like, this is the last year where that would work, because the iPhone comes out 2009. And then after that, it's going to be the default phone for everyone.
Absolutely. Although, I never owned a Blackberry. I was around at this time. I had cell phones at this time.
Like Blackberry knockoff, basically called like a Blackjack. It was like an AT&T phone. It had a little keyboard on it.
I had one of those. Yeah, maybe I had the same thing. I loved my phone with a little keyboard. I would, like, if they made one of those today, old person talking, I would totally get another one of those.
Blackberry, good movie. Did you see Blackberry?
I did not.
Good movie.
Oh, that's right. They made a movie about that.
Yeah, a cool movie. So we basically get our three, other than Jon Hamm, we get our three main characters sort of established in this. We also get a random half-scene performance from Victor Garber as the bank manager, which I was like, is Victor Garber in this movie? And then he's in that one scene, and then that's it. He gets his face bashed in by Jeremy Renner, because Jeremy Renner thinks that he tripped the alarm or whatever.
According to IMDb trivia, he's just like a friend of Ben Affleck, and he just showed up and did a scene, and I mean,
I love Victor Garber, so
yeah, he's great. I would have liked to have seen more of him, but the character's not that important.
Always love to see more Victor Garber. So this robbery's happening. Affleck's character knows, like, when is the vault open? And she goes, oh, it doesn't happen until 9:30. And he's like, it's at 8:15. Stop lying. Don't lie anymore, basically, or whatever, which I like. All that stuff, like showing he has control of the situation.
Well, again, the character development in the scene, sorry, I think I'm a Ben Affleck fanboy. There's this lovely, lovely moment in this midst of all this chaos. So she's opening the bank vault. She's turning the dial, and she's kind of just shaking, and she can't do it. And he puts his hand over hers, but it's like a very sweet sort of way. And he's like, take your time. Right. And the other guys are about to shoot her in the face. And it's like, no, just take it easy. We're not here to hurt you. We just want the money. He just puts his hand on hers in this way that's, I don't think it's a great performance, but I think it's a good bit of direction. I love stuff like that. Those little directorial moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think that was really good. Obviously, we talked about Renner's character in this scene, and how you already getting this sense, right, that he, from that line at the beginning to when he bashes the guy's face with the gun, or whatever, and he also, the way he talks, he's like, we were leaving, and you did it, like, not just like, okay, I'm gonna hit you because I think you did something wrong. I'm incensed that you basically did something stupid and kind of insulted us, basically.
Speaking of direction, all four of those characters are wearing masks in this scene, and later on, the North End robbery, that's kind of the centerpiece of the movie, the nun masks. And yet we always know who's who. Not because, their voices they all kind of have the same Boston accent. They all have these kind of 30-year-old Boston dude, the same voice basically, but the way they behave and the way they move and everything like that tells us exactly who is who behind the mask. We don't need to know. Yeah. They're all, roughly the same, except for Slane. He's the kind of heavyset guy. But otherwise, they're, 30, skinny, playing 30. I know Affleck's older than that at this point. But I think it's kind of brilliant the way the film pulls that off. Because that could be really frustrating otherwise.
I mean, I think also, right, this is one of those times where having recognizable movie actors in your movie helps, because Affleck's voice is... Affleck's voice. Everyone knows what he sounds like, right? So he sounds very different from Jeremy Renner, right? And so
I don't think he sounds that different.
Oh, really? I can recognize his voice.
They're all putting on accents here that are, and Renner studied with people from the town. So
I could close my eyes
and authentic
and be able to tell Ben Affleck's voice. So I could very much tell that from that way and all. But I think,
who's the fanboy now?
I mean, we talked about this last week. I love Ben Affleck.
I know.
I'm not even the one who called you a fanboy. You called yourself a fanboy.
I know. Just saying.
So this opening scene, they take her with them, and they're in the van, right? And Affleck is saying to her, don't worry, no one's gonna hurt you. We're not gonna hurt you. This is not what this is about. You're gonna be fine, right? This is not one of those things where you get taken and you never get seen again. Like that's not the ending of this story, right? And so they let her go, and like you said earlier, it's supposed to be like they let her go, and it's like, okay, we don't have to ever worry about this game. We'll take her license so we know where she lives, but and when they look at that license, they're like, oh shit, she lives like a block away from where we live. And then that sets off that part of the movie. Before this happens, though, before Affleck kind of goes and sees Rebecca Hall's character, we get the introduction of Jon Hamm and Tyus Welliver's character. I have to admit, the first thing I thought when I saw Jon Hamm was, my God, this guy is so handsome. It's like when he comes out of that car. This is obviously like 15 years ago or whatever. It's like right in the middle of the Mad Men thing going on. So he's very big. This was when people thought he was going to be a movie star, right? They're like, you look like that. Like, you're so good in this. Like, you look like a movie star from 40 years ago. Like, you're going to be like a big movie star. And people never really figured out, I think, how to capture his like energy correctly in most movies. And
because I think I don't know if we were on the air when we were talking about this. I think he struggles to play a likable character, a good guy. Your average lead in a movie is not a Jon Hamm type.
No, he's either have to be something like this or he has to be funny, because he's actually very funny
he's funny in this. Yeah.
Yes, he's funny in this. He's funny in stuff like Bridesmaids. He's been funny in other comedies that he's been great at hosting Saturday Night Live. He's been great at being on sitcoms and like bit parts and stuff like that. His thing was like, he has like that thing happens to some actors where because he looks the way he looks, people think, oh, you're a leading man. And it's like, no. He's like a character actor. He just happens to look like a leading man, And
it's not a bad life.
No. I would love to be Jon Hamm.
I would definitely trade places with Jon Hamm.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I'll say about his performance in this movie, it's not really his performance as much as I think it's the character. He just never does anything I don't expect him to do. Right? Yeah, that's the one thing about his character in this movie. I think he's good in it, but there's just no spin on the ball ever in his performance.
You're waiting for some kind of emotional break there, and you never get it, which I think is exactly as I was just saying. That's the role that he's sort of born to play, but also it makes it less interesting than maybe could be.
Yeah, it's not even like he doesn't even have to be nicer. He could have got even meaner. I just was hoping for
that's what I mean.
Shift,
yeah, he's competent and good at his job, and he never breaks the rules in a way where it's like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he doesn't. And like that scene with Ben Affleck when they're in the interrogation room together, which I think is a good scene. It's the thing where like he didn't. It's not like in Wolf of Wall Street when Kyle Chandler goes to like the boat or whatever, and like it's basically like, I know that you're fucking stealing money, and I'm gonna get you. And that scene has so much going on, right? It has Kyle Chandler is putting a spin on the ball. He's very much a similar character to Jon Hamm's character.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this movie, they're very congruous, but in that, Kyle Chandler just has something going on underneath the surface, where he's like, no, like, I don't like you, but I'm not going to be just like a stone wall about it, right? I'm going to bring more. I'm going to match your energy and bring a little like a dickish thing. It was just more interesting, right? And I think in this, could have used a little bit of that from Hamm. I think he's good. I think he serves his purpose, right? And I think he's very believable as this character.
Well, he's interesting too, because he's part of a partner duo with Tyus Welliver's character, but he's always both the good cop and the bad cop.
Yes, he is.
Like he comes off like starts off as the bad cop, then he becomes a little sympathetic, then he kind of swings back in the other direction. He does it with the drug dealer guy that they bust like earlier in the movie.
Yeah,
and then he does it like crazy later on with Blake Lively, which is one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's kind of not that important of a scene, but both of them just destroy that scene. It's awesome.
That is, I think, actually, I should take it back. That is the one thing where he does, I think, put a little bit of spin on the ball, a little bit of change up in his performance, because you do feel like he's going a little far in that moment, and I think in that moment you feel it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think he's good in it. I just think that maybe in the longer version, there's more to him, right? But he serves a purpose in this more than being like a character in this, I think. But we get the next thing we get is basically the Jeremy Renner being like, I'm going to watch the Rebecca Hall character, and if she gets on the line, I'm going to take care of it. And Ben Affleck is like, what the fuck do you mean? Take care of it. Like, who are you? Like, what are you even saying at this point? And so he just says like, I'm going to go look at him because you're going to fuck it up. You're going to get arrested for intimidating a witness and you're going to get us all arrested, basically. So he goes and sort of spies on her for a little bit and then ends up, which feels like a really rocks in your brain move, going into that laundromat and just sitting there with no laundry.
Yeah, it's a very movie moment.
Yeah. You know, going there with no laundry and just be like, I'm just going to sit here reading a newspaper and wait to come up. So I guess it's a good time to talk about this. You said you didn't like the Ben Affleck performance in this. I guess we should talk about that and the Rebecca Hall character / performance in this moment, since this is the moment where they kind of meet. So what is it about the Affleck performance that kind of rubs you the wrong way, or you don't like, or you don't think is good, I guess?
I feel like Ben Affleck is trying too hard a little bit here. There's a naturalism to the performances across the board in this. I mean, Jon Hamm is doing Jon Hamm. Like, leave him aside. But I think, you know, Blake Lively and Jeremy Renner, certainly, Rebecca Hall, who I really like just in general. Ben Affleck it feels forced. And I think I don't know if it's the accent, because it's not a bad accent. It works.
I feel like that's probably the accent he grew up with.
I don't think so. He was from he's from a wealthier suburb of Boston, so he's not a townie.
No, I know.
There's a great review, and I don't remember who wrote it. It's one of the negative reviews of the movie. It's actually the one I don't like. I was just telling you about. I believe it's from Salon or something like that. And I think most of the review is just like, this person hates Ben Affleck and is just going to trash him through this whole thing. But the scene in the garden later where he reveals the story about his mother, you know, I just heard a sound. And in the review, it's like, you can just see the highlights on certain lines in the script where he's like, I'm going to hit this one hard. I feel like he's kind of doing that through the whole movie. He's not bad. He's not unlikable. He's not terrible. But I think he's being outclassed by literally everybody here. And you really see it, you know, when he's up against somebody like Pete Postlethwaite or like even Rebecca Hall, I feel like he's the weak link. He's, you know, if everybody else is a 10, he's like a 6 or a 7. And, you know, does not bad enough to take me out of the movie, but it feels like, you know, and he's got a lot on his shoulders, right? Because this character, we really, really have to like him. We have to sympathize with him, even though he does a lot of bad things. He has to be like the level-headed guy. I think it was that same review that said this might have been better had he switched roles with Jeremy Renner. I don't agree with that. I don't know that he could have been the impulsive, more violent one. But I think it was that review that said he needs to be a little more Chucky in Good Will Hunting. He's a more believable character who also had a very thick accent.
Yes.
But I think Ben Affleck, he's trying to combine gritty Boston guy with like Hollywood leading man guy, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes I just, you know, you see like one of these, because he's a very handsome, very Hollywood guy too. He's not Jon Hamm, but he's in the neighborhood.
No, this is the best he's ever looked too, I think, in any movie.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a little too pretty for this movie, and I think he's trying a little too hard. But
see, here's where I disagree with some of the, I guess, the thesis of your statement about him. I think this movie is not naturalistic at all. Like, I don't think Renner is naturalistic at all. I think Renner is great, but I think he's playing it like Ben Foster could have played the Jeremy Renner role. Like, it's very big. He's being very big. There's not a lot of moments where Renner is, you know, playing it really small. He's playing to the back row a lot of the times. Blake Lively, the same thing. I feel like she's really, like, she's always strung out and just like, you know, throwing her accent at you and really, really big.
But I find both of them so much more believable. I wonder why.
And I'm not disagreeing with like them being great, because I think they are both great in it, and I think Renner is really good. My thing is, I think Affleck is doing the thing that is really tough to do and can often be, you know, seen as a weak link or seen as, I don't know how else to put it, but he has to play kind of the center of the movie, and I think he needs to be a little bit of that sort of movie star, you know, edged sort of person in a movie like this. Because this movie is...
But maybe that's what I'm saying. I think that starts to show. Chris Cooper is a great example too. Like, that's a good scene, and Chris Cooper is a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
He is, you know, he is the heart of every movie that he's in, even something like this where he's in one scene. But like, when we cut back and forth between him and Ben Affleck, it's like, it's an unfair fight almost.
I don't disagree. I think I think all the performances you're talking about are better than Affleck's performance. I just think Affleck is doing a good job at holding down the center of the movie and letting these people around him sort of be the showy parts, right? I think he's not trying to be the showy part of the movie. I think he's trying just to be like the kind of like thing at the middle that keeps it grounded a little bit, and everyone else can kind of do their thing around him. I also think that what you're saying before is true, though, is Affleck just cannot suppress that sort of like charming, smart, sort of like overthinky part of his real personality in his performances, right? So that's why this character kind of works for me, because that's kind of the character he's playing as well. This person who is like a little bit hard Scrabble, but also is like kind of above everyone else as far as like how he thinks about things and how he kind of sees like the scope of his life and his neighborhood and all this kind of stuff. So if he didn't have that part of him, I think the performance would have really been lost in the weeds, because that character didn't have that going on. I think the whole performance would have been bad, because he just can't hide it. He cannot, like when he's doing his little, like, I think where he's best is honestly where he's in those little scenes with Rebecca Hall and he's sort of like doing his little charming, like,
I like to have a good cry in the nail salon.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. I'm like, this feels exactly like the thing that Ben Affleck would say, just without this accent. You know what I mean? So those scenes I think work really well. And I think he's best in those moments. But I think also just like physically, he's able to also project and be believable, right? Because he is a tall, kind of big guy.
Can rock a tracksuit.
Yeah, so you do feel like
tracksuit and a gold chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's Affleck attire.
This guy can physically impose himself in these situations, right?
Agreed.
And so I believe that as well. So those two things I think work. I do agree with you. Look, in a different movie, right? I think that, or if you want to tune this movie more to be a little bit more dirty and gritty, then Affleck is not the right guy for it. You would have to find somebody who can. I mean, his brother obviously is better at doing that than he is, right? I don't think Casey Affleck works in this movie as the lead, because I just don't think.
I don't either. And I also think I have a little bit of bias. Like, I just love Gone Baby Gone so much. I mean, I remember when I saw this when it came out, it's like, this movie's really good. There's nothing I don't like about it, but it's nowhere near as good as Gone Baby Gone. And people like this one better. Like, I think this one was better received kind of by the general public than that. So about the same critical reception, but this tends to be the one that people talk about still, at least in my experience.
Yeah, well, it was a hit. It was a hit. That's the thing. That's one of the reasons why, right?
Money also, and had the sort of high profile Oscar nomination and everything. But I don't know. Maybe it's just that. Maybe I'm also comparing him to his brother in the other movie, who's just so fucking good in that movie.
Yeah, no, his brother's great. I mean, I don't off the top of my mind, I don't know who would be better as this part, who could play this. I don't think Renner's the right person either.
No. And I'm so glad that Renner was cast instead of Mark Wahlberg.
Oh yeah, for sure. I saw that in the thing that you wrote. Yeah,
intended for the role. Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense, right? Mark Wahlberg totally makes sense, especially in this time. We're only a couple years after The Departed at this point. Like, we are in prime. Is Wahlberg good? Like, kind of world at this point?
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying I dislike Mark Wahlberg.
No,
I just think he would have sucked the air out of this movie. Like, he's not the second in command. He's not the supporting character. He
would have been the Affleck part in most iterations of this film if Affleck isn't the director of it, right? But I think you need somebody who can convey that sort of sensitive side more directly than someone like Renner is a great actor, but for Renner, it's really either this type of character where he is like aggro, like very aggro.
He does aggro very well.
Or he's super internal, right? That's the other two things he does. And I don't think either one of those things works. Whenever he's tried to be like, hey, I'm like the charming movie star guy, it's never really worked out great for him. Yeah,
it feels like he's a secret serial killer or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, are you a witness protection? Were you like a guy who hitman for somebody, and then you got stuck in this place?
It's a great way of describing it. It's better. I like that even better than the serial killer. Yeah.
So that's my kind of play. I mean, I don't think I'm not sitting there being like, this is like a Oscar-worthy performance from Ben Affleck, but I do think he keeps the movie together pretty nicely. And I think he works well with Renner as well. I think they have a good chemistry together.
I like their scene in the cemetery together.
Yeah. And I believe that they've been friends for a long time, right? I believe it. I believe that they've known each other for a long time, for sure. Now, Rebecca Hall, who is an actress I really like, and again, much like we talked about last time with Michelle Moynihan, had her like 6-year run where she was the brown-haired girl in like a lot of big movies, right? Starting in like with The Prestige in 2006, Vicky Cristina Barcelona 2008, Frost Nixon in 2008. She's in that Red Riding series, that British series, which is really. Have you ever watched those movies, by the way, the Red Riding movies?
No, always wanted to.
Oh my God, Nick, you would love those movies.
I'm sure they've been on my list forever. Yeah.
The Town is in 2010, and then in Iron Man 3 is in 2013. But even by the time she's in Iron Man 3 in 2013, she's already starting to like. It's going a couple of years between big movies that she's in, movies that people are seeing. Right. And then really like The Gift in 2015 is really the last time she is in a major movie with a major role. And then she's just kind of done. Right. And I always liked her. You know, she's much like Michelle Moynihan, another beautiful, charming, freckle-faced, brown-haired woman who I think has been.
She's at like, I will say in that opening, like she is more like, she seems like a person later on, but in that bank robbery scene in the beginning is like, that is way too beautiful a woman to be working anywhere. Never mind a bank or at like that person is on the cover of magazines. That person's not like a bank manager in Charlestown.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think she is good in the movie. I think the character is just a little bit underwritten. It's just like, it's one of these characters that's like, what?
Yeah, like what is your life? Who are you really?
Exactly.
Like she quits her job at the bank at one point. She's traumatized by the robbery and all of that stuff. And she's like, well, I got savings. I could just do whatever I want now. Like, from where?
Yeah, from working at a bank, being assistant manager at a bank? I don't understand.
She's, she's so perfect. Like, the worst thing about her is she's traumatized by having this horrific, violent thing happen in her life. But like, other than that, I feel like she's just she's a manic pixie dream girl.
She very much is. I mean, she's like a cool, calm, collected pixie dream girl.
I was trying to think of like it's a variation on a theme, but it's
but she volunteers at the local Boys and Girls Club. Yep. She really cares about the community. She's super sweet. She's wants to hear about all his stories. Doesn't care that he never brings her around to any of his friends.
She dates this guy who's probably a scumbag. Like, what are the odds, right? Like, you meet this guy in a laundromat. Yes, he looks like Ben Affleck and he's very charming and everything. But like, no one's that stupid, right? Like, there's at least a 50-50 chance that he is a criminal or something way worse than that.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Actually, what he turns out to be is not all that bad.
Yeah.
To compared to what he could be. So, I don't really get this character at all. But I do think she's very good in this. I agree. It's an underwritten character and kind of a nonsensical character for a movie like this one. Like, why do we have to have the upper class affluent person?
Exactly. That's the thing. It's like, it just feels like a unneeded plot line because in the end, it doesn't really dictate anything that he does either. Like, that relationship is just something that he kind of goes back to every once in a while, but she's not the one who sells him out right in the end.
But I like the relationship. I just don't know if I like the character.
That's what I mean. But I just mean,
there needs to be someone there. It just doesn't necessarily need to be this kind of person,
right? But I'm just saying, like, her whole like existence, like even their dates and stuff like that, up until the point where it's like, okay, we're in like the third or fourth scene we seen with them. I'm like, it just really feels like two good-looking friends hanging out for most of it. You don't get
avocado toast.
Yeah, exactly. You don't really get like I don't feel the heat or attraction between them. It doesn't feel like
and then there's a sex scene later on, and I was like, hey, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to like maybe hit the brakes on this thing a little? Like, you shouldn't, when you're two like very attractive leads in the movie, like have sex in the movie,
Yeah.
you should be like, oh, I've been waiting there like this. You
Yeah,
can see like
exactly.
right from the first time they locked eyes, you were waiting for this scene. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing that. I was like, oh, I don't remember them actually doing that in this because it just
Yeah.
seems not right.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just one of the things where it's like she finds out that he was part of the crew that kidnapped her, and she has like, you know, she does the most she does is like yell at him, and then he's like basically goes to see her again and is like, just hear me out, we can go away together. And she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this character? Like, who in their right mind would be like, oh, you're the one who like kidnapped me and lied about
She's a
it?
free spirit, Bobby.
It's
She's
like,
just
apparently.
she just like goes where the wind takes her. You know?
Just
Maybe
more
as a
interesting if
kid,
like
we'll go to Florida.
if like
We'll go
she
live by night.
already if she had figured out herself or something, you know, she figured out herself and it come to pieces and she'd be like, I already know. Or something. Like at least there would have been something.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? You know exactly how she's going to react in both situations, right?
Mhm.
Like you can tell as soon as they start having this relationship, there's going to be a point where she says, fuck you, I never want to see you again.
Exactly.
And then they're going to get back together and she's going to be like, all right, I'll hear you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even in like the scene that should be, you know, that decision she makes at the end of the film, which should be suspenseful, I never felt like she was really going to sell him out. And, you know, it's kind of clever the way that's brought up, that whole sunny days thing. I like that. I also like when Hamm figures that out not too long after.
I do like that too. Yeah.
Like when he's defeated and he's telling his guys, all right, we'll get him next time or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that moment too. But like, I never saw I was never surprised much by anything that plays out.
Yeah, I do like when he's like, you know, we're a national organization, right?
Yeah, that was good. He's a lot of fun in this.
Yeah, he is. Like there's that scene, right, where she tells him about her brother dying or whatever. And she's like, oh, my brother died on a day like this, you know, this sunny day or whatever. And not that it's not a good scene. They're both good in it. Like, I believe her, but it's just one of those times where you're like, I can feel the screenwriting or whatever whatever.
Well, that other scene about Affleck's character's mom, same thing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I heard the sound.
Yeah. It just feels like screenwriting. It just feels like you need like these physical embodiments of, a tangible embodiments of this trauma, so you can call it back. Like
also, there's a lot of sunny days, so she's just thinking about death like pretty much all the time.
I know.
I mean, you know, New England, we have not the greatest weather, but most days of the year are, at some point they look kind of exactly like that. So I guess I feel maybe that's it. Maybe that's the key to her character.
Yeah, she's like, I feel depressed or whatever. That's probably not good, right? And he's like, no, I think it's fine. I'm like, no, you should go to therapy. You shouldn't every day it's sunny for your whole life feel
I see
depressed.
The sun, I get upset and think about my brother dying. Yeah.
This is probably a trauma you need to just work through. Like, it's fine to remember your brother, but like, let's work through the trauma a little bit, you know? Anyway, so that was definitely I want to get that out of the way because that was definitely the part of the movie that was the weakest to me, was that relationship throughout the movie. Circling back though
but you agreed that the idea of it is a good idea.
The idea of it is fine. It's just the execution of it.
Yeah, but having that drive the movie is a great choice.
Yeah, it is. But the problem is like it just exists. It's like siloed off in its own bucket for the whole movie, even though it's so intertwined in like a thematic, like plot wise, because of the fact that
there needs to be more of a threat from not just her finding out, but Jeremy Renner finding her. And,
exactly.
And that scene where they're having, I know it's not avocado toast, but
whatever it is,
we never see the food on the table. I'm imagining it looks like an avocado toast kind of place.
Yeah.
Where he shows up and it is like he's great in that scene.
Oh, he's great in that scene. Yeah, he's awesome in that scene.
Sort of menacing thing that he's doing there is legitimately terrifying. And I did remember that he never ended up actually getting to her, but in that moment I was like, wait a minute, where is this going to go? And the tattoo, like she's seen his fighting Irish tattoo on the back of his neck. And I love it. I love the way Ben Affleck grabs him by the neck. It's like, all right, see you at home, brother. And it's nice.
And I like that scene after, right, where Renner's like, you gotta, what's the plan, man? Like, because
it's not just like, I hate you and I'm gonna kill her and everything. Yeah. It's like, all right, tell me there's a plan, because he does sort of defer. Like he doesn't always defer to him. Right. He kind of goes off and does his own thing. But there is this respect there, and there are lines that I think he can cross, and I like that. I like that sort of tension with that character. Because it could always spill over, but it never quite does, and I'm glad it does. I sort of like that they're in some sense friends to the end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that scene right where he's talking to Rebecca Hall's character, and she's like, "Oh, I was walking home through the projects, and people were throwing bottles at me, or whatever." And he's kind of like subtly poking at her, trying to figure out who it is. And then that scene, which I feel the next scene, which I feel like is one of the scenes that people most sort of like call out from this movie, probably not even knowing it's from this movie, but that line of like, I need to ask you to do something.
Whose car are we taking?
Yeah, whose car are we taking? That whole thing. But then what I like though, what I think is interesting about that pair of scenes is that it's kind of not enough for him, even though he says that. When he gets in that room with him, he's like, "What'd you do? What'd you do?" Because he wants to know, like, why am I here doing this right now? You know, even though he acts like I'll do anything for you, which he will, but he still is kind of like, there's something fishy about like this scenario that I'm in right now. And it also shows you right in that scene as he shoots the guy in the leg, and you know, the Affleck character, you know, you can tell is kind of like put off by it, but also is like, no, this is kind of what I wanted to happen, was him to go this far so these people never do.
Right. But he wasn't going to do it himself.
Exactly. Yeah. Which makes that scene later when he's at the cemetery have more impact, because you can kind of believe what Renner's saying in that scene a lot more, because you have this scene where you see Affleck do it, where you see Affleck be like, I'm not going to ask him to do it, but I know what he'll do. Right. And Renner's just so fucking crazy. He takes the mask off. He's like, yeah, you know my face, but I know your face too. It's like really intense. Yeah, Renner's really good in this, but I think, right, if this character was the lead character, not even if he was playing the Affleck character, if this Renner character was the lead character, he would be interminable, right? It would just be like something where
we don't
just would not work.
Nope.
You need some breaks from Jem throughout the thing. But I do like in that scene with Rebecca Hall where that's where what the secret sauce to Renner, right, is that he can be intimidating, he can be really internal, he can be kind of scary. But in that moment where he's explaining where he got the nickname from, he's like kind of charming.
I buy it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like this is one of those guys who like is kind of dirty and dangerous, but you're kind of like, okay, but there's like something.
He's like your elementary school friend that you probably shouldn't be hanging out with.
Exactly.
There's something about him.
Yeah, there's something interesting about this guy, you know? And so like that moment where he's like, you're like, oh, me a real gem or whatever. I like, okay, I had a lot
of friends like him in elementary school. I was at school in a kind of a bad section. I didn't stay long, but there's some people's houses I probably shouldn't have been hanging out at, and they all probably followed a gem kind of path in life. I did not stay close to a lot of them.
So,
whereas I was more of a Ben Affleck, I guess. Celebrity relationships, alcoholism, the whole night.
You were addicted to Oxy and you got over it. You worked at a gravel pit.
Oh no, I meant the real Ben Affleck. Sorry.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh yeah, Boston. What's it? Boston Sand and
Gravel.
I actually like. There's a scene where, because he tells her that's where he works, and I was like, and he does this thing. He's like, yeah, I slide down the dinosaur's back and jump in my car, like the Flintstones reference.
That's another Affleck ass moment right there.
Yeah. It's very Good Will Hunting. But then he actually does work there. Like I thought that was a bullshit story, and I like that we actually see him there and gets arrested there.
Yeah. So the Blake Lively character, right? She has a daughter named Shine, which I hate.
It's a good choice, though.
It's a great choice for this character.
That lady has a daughter named Shine.
Yes, absolutely. She's Jeremy Renner's sister.
Which is that's got to be in the longer cut, right? Like I don't think the two of them even have a scene together.
No, they don't.
I don't think we ever see them in frame or even in the same location.
No, only at that barbecue. The barbecue that the cops taking pictures of them. But
they're not talking. They're nowhere near each other.
No, they're nowhere near. They don't talk. And so her and Affleck's character have a history. We get a little sex scene at the beginning. Basically get the vibe that Ben Affleck's character was like into her when he was whacked out on drugs. And now that he's sober, he's not into her anymore. She has a daughter. Affleck's character claims that it's not his, but there seems to be a little bit of like, I don't know, up in the airness about that from the other people in their lives. But again, I think like, if it not for the two scenes with Hamm at the end, I think that her character also would have felt weird to be in this movie, because you get that opening scene with her and then you really don't see her again until probably there's 30 minutes left in the movie, probably at that point when they're setting up for the Fenway job. So the scene that she's in, though, I think the opening scene is fine, but that scene, the two scenes with Hamm I think are really, really
the,
great.
The one with Ben Affleck in the hotel room.
It's also good.
Fenway
Yes.
is really great.
Yeah. Also very good. This was right around the time.
I really like that. Now I'm just thinking about it. That scene's terrific too. Great dialogue there. Like that is such again, this 40s noir sort of thing that this film is doing, where he's basically, she comes back to him and she's like, I'm going to run away with you. Like, no, I'm going to go with somebody else. And what does she say to him? Something like, well, she's not here. Well, then where is she?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not kind of at first getting this point that like the whole point of what Affleck wants is to not have his life entangled in this way, right?
Yeah, but I'm not the biggest Blake Lively fan, but like this character is so heartbroken in that moment, but she kind of maintains this, stiff upper lip thing. I think she's terrific in that scene. And I love when Ben Affleck just picks up the little girl and, because they're like cursing at each other and fighting in this room right in front of her. And like, it's okay, sweetheart, just go out in the hall. Stuff like that.
What's the more? Like, why do you have the kid here? Like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah. What's he say? Like, you could do 30 years just for walking in that door and you brought the kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, that's exactly what that character would do.
Oh, 100%. She's like Amy Ryan's character from Gone Baby Gone, but like 10 years earlier absolutely. Or whatever. Yeah. She's only like 22 when she's doing this movie too. Like she's super young. Gossip Girl is basically when this movie's shot, which I gets cast, I should say, Gossip Girl has probably just started. And yeah, Blake Lively, I have again, I don't think she's good sometimes, she's bad other times. I think she's good in this. She's good in like
Savages, I think they're the same year as this, right?
The Savages, yeah, Savages is a weird ass movie. But she's good in like The Age of Adeline and The Shallow. She's good in some of those earlier movies that she's in once she sort of like gets a little bit into her groove. And then since then, she's just kind of gone a little weird and spacey since then. She's good in this movie. The other big character is the Pete Postlethwaite character, who is the florist, who is like the kind of like the head of this. I don't even know what to call it, right? He's not like head of like
it's a syndicate, but it's a small syndicate.
Yeah, it's not like he's the head of the mob or anything.
It's not even really that. It's more he's the guy that like sets up all the jobs and everybody kind of works for him, even though it's not it's kind of a loosely affiliated organized crime syndicate. Yeah. Pete Postlethwaite, he died right after this movie came out, so I'm imagining he's not well. This is one of those performances, like the entire career of John Cazale, where there's this like extra poignancy to it because this person is not going to be around long, and it's kind of just giving it his all at this last sort of moment. Like, I love that guy. I've liked him in everything I've ever seen him in. Obviously, The Lost World. He runs away with that movie that's not very good, but man, was he great in it. I looking at this movie again now and knowing that he passed away not long, like he feels not well in this. But actually, I think that adds kind of a dimension to the character too, because Fergus is a real son of a bitch.
He is.
Oh man, like the way he just delivers some of these lines, this acidity that he has, and it's like he's almost hard to watch. He's so good.
Yeah, and he did this in Inception. They both came out in 2010, right? Yeah. He's also great in Inception in a little part. He's really close to the end when he's doing Inception, for sure. Basically, there's a whole thing in a hospital bed, essentially.
Yeah.
Spielberg said he's the greatest actor he's ever worked with. That's what he said about Pete Postlethwaite. Yeah. I think he's so good. He's he's this little, like, frail-looking old dude, and he's so intimidating.
This, right? Yeah, the shirts are too big on him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He looks like a sick person.
But he's still intimidating in it. Like when
he's terrifying.
When he's pruning those flowers, and he's telling Ben Affleck how he, like, basically killed his mom, like not, with his own hands, but basically killed his mom. He's
like 1,000 times. So he has this like lackey. I don't think the guy even gets a character name.
That has a name, because when Affleck walks in the copy room, he goes like, "Hey, come here," and they shoot.
I love that scene too. But like, it's this like big, heavy set, like tough ass looking dude with a big ass shotgun that just kind of hangs out in the florist and is the bodyguard of Fergus. But Fergus is like so much scarier than this guy. It's like he might as well not even be there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Great
Did you get the sense that like character's not scared of him at all? Like Doug's not scared of him at all.
Like walks right past that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So So we got all this going on. We got the Hall relationship developing. You know, we've got them sort of like the FBI trying to track them down. They've sort of broken a couple leads, right? Which is that, and some of the stuff I really like is I just really like process investigation stuff, which is like they figure out that that in order for them to like have disrupted the alarm or whatever, they have to be able to, someone has to be worked at this company that has these boxes, right? So they are able to track down the company, figure out who had sick days he took sick days on the days that the company was, that the robberies were going on, and they start to kind of break through, right? So they figure out like, okay, who knows this person?
Right.
And
it's a government affiliated company, so you have to log your sick days to like public record or something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, which I like that a lot too. I love little stuff like that. They start tracking our group of people. They start tracking them pretty early. They start onto them pretty early, right? And they know there's heat on them, but Renner basically is like, there's a job, but I want to do that next job. And Affleck is like, no, like it's not the right job. This guy is like, I think he calls him like a G.I. Joe the guard. Well, the guy's in the truck. He's a former military guy.
Tucks his pants to his combat boots.
Yeah, he's like, let's find another job where a guy is like fat and wears his shirt untucked and is like whatever, like, you know. But Renner is like basically using this Rebecca Hall thing against him at this point, and is like, no, we're gonna do this or whatever. So he's like, fine, if we get busted, it's on you, right, or whatever.
Pinch. They use that word a lot.
Sorry, they use the word pinched a lot. So this is the big, this is obviously very big in the trailer, right, when this movie came out, which is this nun mask heist that they do in the north end of Boston.
Yeah.
It's a great image.
Nuns with guns. I mean, I know Rage Against the Machine had the t-shirt. Like, it's just one of those things that always works.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know why, but yeah.
I love that they chose the north end to shoot this scene in. Because if you've ever been in the north end of Boston, it's so tight, it's so small. It looks like a European city, right, in that part of the city, because it's so small, so tight. I love that. I love when you...
It's full of my people.
It's full of your people, exactly. Great Italian restaurants.
Spiritual home, yeah, absolutely.
In the north end of Boston.
But it's a perfect place to stage a car chase. So that car chase is, it's the car chase from Amores Perros, which is a great movie also.
Oh, okay.
Ben Affleck basically said he just copied that, kind of just translated that to the north end of Boston. And yeah, they're cutting these corners that are just like, there's no way a car could do that, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, obviously, someone's doing it, right? Someone's doing it in a like a stunt car or whatever. And
I enjoy that chase very, very much.
Love it, because one of the things, look, I love a great car chase where crazy stuff is happening and they're going real fast. But I also love a car chase where it's like, you can only go so fast in this little place.
The tightness of it, I think, really adds to it. This is not the Fast and the Furious at all.
You know, like the French Connection, obviously, is like one of the famous ones. I think the car chase in the third Bourne movie, which is actually in New York City as well, like is a similar thing where it's like pretty slow, right? Where it's just like, no, like there's only so much you can do in a city like this, but it can still be really tense and really fun. And of course they switch cars.
And part of the challenge is, switching cars, but also like getting cars to crash into each other and just block this like one lane sort of. It's really well done. Again, Affleck's a pretty solid action director.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the closing heist sequence, the Fenway Park thing, is really nicely done as well.
I love the Fenway Park heist as well. And I think this is great as like this centerpiece of this middle part of the movie where, you know, you could very well see, and there's a tension here because there's a version of this movie where one of them or some of them get caught in this moment, right? And it kind of starts to spiral things even more until they're so desperate they have to do a job at the end. But, you know, you don't know what direction the movie's going to go in at this point, right? So really good in that way.
And just a great bit at the end of this. They get away, so the cops close the bridge into Charlestown. They're too late. They arrive in Charlestown, and this cop sees them, these nuns with guns.
Oh, yeah, I love
exactly what they are and who they are, and just kind of looks the other way. Like, oh, another day in Charlestown. Fucking love that.
I know that it's a pretty long set of like reverse shots, right? Going between the two of them where they're like...
Yeah, they look at him, he looks at them. Yeah. It's like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this right now.
Yeah, because even like Renner, right, character is like, I don't want to shoot this fucking cop because like that's gonna really
Probably knows him. They probably
exactly.
got somebody's dad, somebody's uncle. Like, oh
Yeah.
man, if I don't have to, I won't.
Yeah, exactly. Turns his head and they just go away, right?
It's great.
It's great. This whole sequence is really, really, really good. And you know, I love it too. Things do go a little wrong, right? The GI Joe ass guy, like takes one of them hostage, right? And then he has to shoot the guard. And basically Affleck in that moment is like, I fucking told you. Like while they have masks on in the middle of this robbery, he's like, you know, like this is exactly what I told you was going to happen.
The guy's pulse, but it's a great moment for that character too.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to shoot people.
No, he doesn't want to kill people at all.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah,
I really like. There's this little throwaway line in this movie about how Renner's character plays a lot of Xbox, and so many of these robbery sequences they're so GTA, right? They're just in the middle of the street with an automatic weapon, and the cops are firing at them. It's like, let me fire 500 rounds at you. I like that a lot. Like clearly, you can see where they got that idea from, both the movie and the character, and it works kind of nicely.
Yeah, he has that scene where he's like, all you care about is weed and Xbox, and you're gonna act like you care about your niece now or whatever when he's talking about Shine.
You know, and then he hides behind like a little piece of cover, like a little mailbox or something that doesn't even shield
at the
all
end,
of his body.
Yeah, at the end, yeah, absolutely. And so this happens, and then we do get this scene where Hamm is like, I don't care what you have to do, find me something that looks like a fingerprint so I can bring these guys in, because like I'm not letting them just like go into the wind at this point. This is not happening.
Of process stuff, I love the barbershop. They collect some hair from a barbershop.
Oh yeah, the hair,
scatter it in the car, and they light the car on fire. It's like, there's some DNA for you.
Yeah, he goes, all the DNA in Charlestown or whatever he says when he's pouring it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Because earlier, right, he does go, when they're going through the people, he goes like, when the Hamm is going through all the members of the gang, he goes, these operations are pretty well planned. He's like, and none of these geniuses are the ones who are doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, they know right away who the ringleader is. And it's, you know, the movie plays that out. I mean, he is wildly smarter than the other three.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also get this scene, right, where after this, I think this is after this, right, where Affleck goes to the jail to see the dad. And we've learned about the dad that he got sent out there. He killed like 2 guards from a truck, like a truck robbery or whatever. So he got sent up to the jail, serving 2 life sentences.
He was gonna get a life sentence if he sold out his friends, and he didn't sell out his friends.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's you know, that's mentioned. I think the second scene in the movie where they're just kind of decompressing after the first robbery, and you know, Affleck shows up at the bar and they're talking about his dad. I was just telling about your dad, like stone cold badass he was by not selling his friends out. So you know there's going to be that tension through the whole thing. Like, is he going to follow in his father's footsteps or be the better person in some sense? Which I guess it's a little selfish to do that, but
yeah. Another thing too, much like Gone Baby Gone, I love that they just shoot a lot of this stuff in like shitty apartments and shitty bars.
Dive bars, yeah.
You know, I think that's great. But like the North End thing, like and I love that sort of like switch, right, between what the North End looks like and what Charlestown looks like, and like the difference in the chase in the little tiny streets when they get onto like like whatever it is. I don't know if it's Commonwealth Ave or where the fuck they're on when they're going down. You know, it's a little bit of a bigger road or whatever, and when they're racing to the bridge, and he's like, "That's what driving is," or whatever when he gets away. Like all that stuff a lot. But he goes to see the dad. And Chris Cooper just, you know, given big time shit heel, you know, closed off dude, really great, you know, in this scene with Affleck.
I feel bad. I've been rewatching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he kind of reminds me of Mac's dad. And they're nothing alike, but I don't know. I got some Mac's dad vibes from that scene.
It's a good scene. You know, I don't know. It's sort of another piece of this puzzle of the mom story, right? It's really about like Affleck sort of being hung up on his mom and
the lost dog posters in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Just a lot of like ragging on a little kid, basically, is what happens in this scene and in the scene with Pete Postlethwaite later.
A little kid who just lost his mom.
His mom, and like, look at you fucking idiot.
I just needed you to do something. I wanted to shut you up. So
yeah, you stupid idiot, trying to find your mom. You know, that was like the whole vibe.
terrific parenting is
of that.
another staple of the Affleck movie.
Yeah. But what I do think it tells you is like, yeah, like the fact that Affleck is even as, or Dougie is even as adjusted as he is kind of a miracle, right? Because his dad, even serving 2 life sentences, just has no redeeming qualities about him really at all, you know? Because even like, you know, you could just, if you just kind of like kept quiet, Dad, you would go to like the minimum security prison and you would like be able to relax and it would go after you.
You know, somebody's got to handle things in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, being a criminal is like, it's a calling. It's not just what he does, but it's where he belongs, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
He's from Charlestown. That's apparently what you do there.
He's in the business, the town business of robbing banks and armored cars. And so after that, the cemetery scene.
I'm blanking on the order here.
It's
There's
around
a lot
this
of like
time.
late second act stuff.
Yeah. There's the Rebecca Hall scene spread all throughout this thing where we're getting like little bits here and there, right? This is the point where he probably has just said to her like, we're gonna go away together. This is before she finds out. This is before like Hamm character, the FBI agent, comes to her and goes like, look at all the people. We figured out who the people are, basically. And I do love that Hamm is just doing it as a dickhead. Like he could have done it.
Showmanship. Yeah, it's great. He's like, these 3 guys, and here's the last one. Well, it's Ben Affleck.
Yeah, exactly.
Really nice.
You do need a lawyer. He says there at that point.
This is not very civil libertarian for her, but if you lawyer up, that means you're guilty.
Yeah. Oh, before this, he brings them in. He brings in the crew, right? And we get this sort of the interrogation scene with Affleck and Titus Welliver and then Hamm as well.
Well, this is where we learn the little that we do about the Titus Welliver character also.
Yes. Yeah. We learned what he was talking about at the beginning, how he lived in Charlestown. He's a traitor. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the, obviously, this kind of, criminal mentality, which keeps people in this life, which is that, leaving this life and trying to clean up this town is actually worse than the crimes that we're committing, right? The crimes we're committing is just like what we do to survive. And anybody who leaves and tries to sort of change the way we operate is a traitor and a rat, right? So that's
felt very Gone Baby Gone. Like, yes, there are moments where this grounds itself in some kind of, and I know it's not reality, but there is this kind of wider thing that's happening. Yeah. And then Hamm comes in, and I think him and Affleck have a good thing going on, and I like that Hamm's whole thing is like, I just brought you in here to let you know, like, you're going to spend all your life in prison, and at some point you're going to come to me and try to make a deal, and I'm going to laugh in your face and be like, I just want you to know it was me telling you to go fuck yourself. Yeah, which is the key line in the next Affleck movie as well. It's true. It absolutely is true. It's a little through line that he's got going on. Yeah. So we have that. He's an auteur. We're there already. We are. You know what? We don't even need to do the rest of them. Ben Affleck is the greatest that ever. He's our Hitchcock. So we get that scene, and then we get. Man, I can't wait to see Air. How great is that going to be? Oh my goodness, you haven't seen Air, right? I haven't. Oh, okay, all right. I feel like that's a 6 out of 10 at best. Yeah, but like a good 6 out of 10, like a very enjoyable 6 out of 10. You know what I mean? So we get this scene, and then like I said, we get the cemetery scene, basically where Affleck is like, I'm out or whatever, like I'm leaving. And Renner is like, you're not going. What does that fucking mean? Like, you're leaving. You can't leave. Like, I spent 9 years in prison for you, and I'm not letting you go. Like, you're not going anywhere. And that is revealed in the scene, right? This is about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the way through the movie where we find out, what he did. They say early on he's got 2 strikes, right? Like, he's done time, and like he's really kind of on the knife edge. But the fact that he did it to save Doug's life is important. Yes, absolutely. And he's like, I didn't ask you to do that, and you didn't have to. Just like I said about that scene earlier when they go to beat up the guys, right? Dougie knows, right, that what he'll do unless he really tells him not to do it. So by letting him do it, he did know, and he reaped the rewards of it, right? So after this, we get we basically Dougie gets the word that the florist wants to see him. And that's where, Fergus reveals that it was because of him why his dad went to prison and why his mom left, basically both of those things. And, basically threatens Rebecca Hall's character that he's going to kill him.
he'll kill her if she doesn't do this last job, which is this big, huge fucking Fenway Park robbery.
Send a funeral arrangement to her house, which is
Yeah.
like, I love the fact that he's a florist, and I love that that little bit there.
Yeah, and he says, anything happens, I'm gonna come back here and I'll kill you both myself, right? Is what Dougie says. And this is when he goes to, we talk about the scene where he goes to Rebecca Hall. Rebecca Hall knows now what he did. We get the go to hell scene, and then she goes to see her again with the garden. And basically she's like, okay, I'll hear you out, essentially. Whatever.
It's where she hangs out, the community garden.
The community garden. She goes to her apartment and the community garden. That's the only places that she goes.
Well, where is she going to go? Like to
I don't know.
Sex shop or a
maybe she should find a job.
No. She's perfect. She's a perfect. She's like just a sparkling example of what a human being can be. So she's growing crops for the community.
She is. She's growing crops for the community.
Volunteering at the Boys and Girls Clubs. Never does anything that is not selfless and wonderful.
Yeah. So we get the setup for this job, which is there's this guy who has gambling debts, and sort of to get out from under them and not get basically probably killed by the florist, right? He gives up the fact that this is where the money gets dropped off, and how it gets dropped off after a big weekend homestand.
Not important, but amazing to me. Like the shit they get away with involving Fenway Park in this movie. It's like,
oh yeah,
the Red Sox like they signed off on this.
Of course,
they did an event for the movie at Fenway Park. They had the actors come out onto the field. Like, I'm a Yankees fan, so whatever. I'm from Connecticut, so I'm a Patriots Yankees fan. I could do that. I split the difference. But I was like, I remember when I saw this the first time, I was like, did somebody in the front office there be like, are you sure we want to have all these shady characters and shady stuff happening in our, what do they call it? The cathedral?
The Cathedral of Boston. Yeah. The Cathedral of Boston. I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan.
I know, like a lot of my friends are, and they all love this movie. It's like, all right, not the greatest portrait of.
I mean, it doesn't say anything bad about Fenway Park.
No, but there's like a really graphic shootout that happens like literally in the bowels of Fenway Park.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, that stuff was very cool. Like I love that whole setup. I love this idea of we're gonna get this money, like we're gonna take it, and we're just gonna go. It's obviously a huge job. He says, like, after a weekend homestand with New York, all this money, they're playing Toronto when the game they go to. I'm like, okay, like they probably had to pick a game that was going on right while they were there, So still a lot of money, right? And they set up the whole idea of what's going to happen. And this week, the Blake Lively scene, the two Blake Lively scenes, sandwiched with the Jon Hamm scenes and the Ben Affleck scene, all great. Basically, Hamm is like, there's a weak link. There's gotta be a weak link. And he finds the weak link in the Blake Lively character and sort of sets her on this like self-destructive bent, right? Where tells her about the Rebecca Hall character. It kind of sends her spiraling. She goes, obviously talking about Affleck, the scene with Affleck where he kind of like dismisses her. She ends up in the hospital because she was on coke and oxy and drunk or whatever. And he basically says, like,
in the car,
we're going to take your daughter away if you don't tell me what's going on. Basically, is what happened. And she tells him what's up. And so they're basically one step ahead of where the gang is at this point. I really like this whole scene where Renner and Affleck go in dressed as the cops and the way they deal with the security at Fenway Park and how that whole scene sort of breaks down.
Boston thing.
It's
right?
such a Boston thing.
These two cops walk in, and then the security guards come to them. They just yell at each other and fuck you, no, fuck you.
Yeah. Whoa.
Well, I don't know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. Love all of that.
And then those guys just end up zip tied on the floor.
Yeah. And see, that stuff, also some of the jokes we talked about, that's the one we talked about Gone Baby Gone last time, where I was like, there's just not any air, like, to give me a little break between the serious stuff. This has that all over the place, right? Where you're like,
yeah.
Even the scene, which is essentially a tense scene, is funny because of how they're behaving, right? Because they're just so ridiculous in a kind of believable way, right? Because if you've been spending time in Boston, you get it. But then there's that, and then when he's like, I love when he's at the door and he's like saying their names, like, in the cash room.
Yeah. Your wife Linda, the other guy's wife, is also Linda. So Linda's wants you to open this door. We go drive at both your houses. The Linda's want you to open this door. Fantastic.
take all the money, and then when they're packing it up, I love this kind of stuff in movies like this, where first Affleck's character is like, something's going on, right? First of all, I like when they're pushing the money through the like roll of people, and they're just like, and everyone's sort of like not looking at them, or just like, hey, what's up, guys? Because they're dressed in cop uniforms, so they're not even like clocking something could be wrong, right, with what's going on. But this moment where Affleck's kind of like, something's going on, because he starts looking around. There's like nobody around them, right? They were just around a bunch of people. Now everyone's gone, and he looks out like the window or whatever, and he sees all these fucking cops outside. And then I also like that also Renner is also like, something's up, and he sees that little flash.
Yeah.
And unlike Affleck, who's like, I'm going to investigate and try to figure out subtly that something's going on. So we can
Renner's
figure out,
just like, I'm going to fire as many rounds as I can get off at this flash of nothingness.
Yeah.
Just in case it might be something threatening. I love also, we cut outside to, Jon Hamm and this, like the whole Boston Police Department. It's a lot of cops out there, and they don't know what's going on inside. Like, I've been to Fenway Park, obviously, but I don't know like exactly where this is, but they're like in the sort of underground section, and there's like one window basically. So nobody knows. There's this like barrier between them, which ends up kind of playing out later. And there's this great bit where they stick the gun through the hole in the side of the car. And man, I think I really like this movie.
So good. I love that, Renner shoots, and then just one of those good sort of like filmmaking moments where cops don't start shooting back immediately, right? There's like this pause that lasts a little bit longer than you expect it to. And all of a sudden they just stand up. And you're like, oh my God, there's so many cops already in here,
And they're, SWAT, they got the shield and everything. Like, this is going to be like a nightmare, like a bloodbath. And it is.
Yeah.
But I don't know, done in a way like, I like the style of this, it's Heat-esque, but it's not exactly what you see in Heat.
Right. It's like you said, but there's a couple different areas, right? There's the inside, there's the outside. How do those things interact? How quickly can they get in? They can't just run in because there's live gunfire happening. And I like that the guys are smart enough to realize they have to cause some sort of distraction. So sending that van out, the armored truck out there, causes like a bit of a dust up, right? They don't know what's going on.
Yeah, another like blocking the road kind of moment.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of our people get hit, right? The bigger guy gets hit. One of the guys gets flat out just like shot in the head.
Desmond
gets shot in the head. And then basically the one guy, the heavy guy, is like, look, I'm hit. He's like, they're not expecting cops to be coming out here. They're expecting paramedics, because they figure out that they know that they're in paramedic costume.
Great bit earlier on where they Renner and Affleck go in dressed as cops, and then they like rip their cop uniforms off, and right underneath is like this pristine white EMT uniform.
Yeah.
Like, what a great idea.
Great idea. And so the bigger guy takes the car. Well, I believe he's the guy in Gone Baby Gone, right? The like drug dealer guy.
That's Bubba. Yeah,
Bubba, who takes him to the thing.
Raffles. Yep.
Yeah. So he basically drives the ambulance out and basically kind of like sacrifices himself for them to leave, right? But there's this great moment.
I don't think like when he says to them, I could take a pinch. I think he actually believes that, like, they're gonna not fire 1,000 rounds into this car and kill me, and then they just do.
I don't know in that moment, because he's already hit in that moment too. Like he's already, because I think there's a little bit of like, because he keeps driving. Like if he had stopped when Hamm shot out the tires or whatever, he probably wouldn't have gotten killed. But he just like runs into cop cars and everything. But so there's another great funny sort of like boss moment where they dress as the cops, and then like the FBI comes in and the Boston Police Department's there, and they're like, hey, what the fuck are you doing here? And then
Ben Affleck, the poet laureate of Boston, and yet every time he has it in a movie, it's not like the happiest place.
No. And I love when they leave. First of all, I mean, Hamm obviously catches on to it, where he's like, because the one guy's like, I don't know if these guys are magicians or whatever, but the security guy says they got waylaid by 2 cops. And he's like, oh, cops. And then he sees the Jeremy Renner carrying the bag, and like, very astutely goes after him, because he knows, like, something's up with this guy who's walking away when everyone else is walking towards it. Renner not being the smartest.
Oh,
Obviously.
I love a slow foot chase.
Yeah, but I mean,
One of
Affleck
my
obviously smart.
favorite things in movies. Yeah.
Affleck playing in like these zones where he's like sort of like hanging out near the other cops or sort of always sort of not calling attention to himself, right? Renner has like a bag that's the size of a person, and he's
They
walking.
kind of say goodbye to each other. They go their separate ways. Affleck is watching. He's like close enough where he can see what's going on.
Yeah.
Renner kind of like slowly, but not slowly enough, just sort of goes in his own direction with the bag. And there's this great moment. They're in like a parking lot or outside of a parking lot where they're just Hamm's character's kind of following him, and we keep cutting back and forth between the two of them, and things are going to go down pretty soon. It's really nicely done.
Yeah.
Almost like a Sergio Leone gunfight kind of, the anticipation is everything.
Yeah. And earlier I should say that Renner does say like, I'm not going back to jail. So
yeah. Of course not.
If we get jammed
we
up,
don't even need that. We know that about that character.
Yeah.
It's such a cliche. It's such a movie thing, but
yeah,
he plays it well. It's not his fault. It's not even the script's fault. But like,
no,
we don't need to see it.
No, if we get jammed up, I'm going down. Basically,
jammed up and pinched. I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the vernacular in these movies.
I will say in this moment, Hamm very smart for knowing and clocking that this guy is weird and that he should track him down. Not so smart for just solo foot chasing him into a parking lot. This dangerous man, like just all by himself.
Way bigger gun than yours too.
Yeah. Obviously, he doesn't see the gun right away, but he knows. So he calls it in, and then the guy won't turn around, and then he says his real name, and then he just. I love again. Physicality from Renner is really good in this moment. Where the way he spins with that gun,
beautiful, yeah,
and just shoots as he spins, just so good, so effective, right? And I love this, like the choreography of that scene where Hamm is basically just like circling the car as Renner circling the car. And Renner is not
great. Yeah, it's like a chase around the car. Yeah, it's like, it played wrong. That's a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Yeah,
in this movie, I'm like, yeah, that's probably what you would do in that situation. That's really tense.
Yeah, like not just like I take some shots of you duck away and I run. Right, I'm gonna like make sure like either you die or you're backed off enough where I can get out of the situation. And he just walks in the middle of that street and just is like shooting that Tech 9 like crazy at
Again,
people.
It's GTA, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And little moments like I like the fact that he drinks like the sip of the soda while he's hiding behind the thing. Hamm hits him with the shotgun in the leg. All of these things, and then when he's like, "Okay, I surrender," and then he talks out and just starts. He's about to fucking just open fire and gets killed like that, right?
Yeah.
My question to you is like, do you think Affleck's character, like Dougie, is doing anything wrong in this moment by not trying to step in, like giving himself up to try to like end it?
I mean, that's the tension, right? But like, what could he possibly do? Like he's rational. I mean, I think that's kind of what we get from him through this entire movie. Like he's caught up in this thing. I mean, he's good at it. It's like, it's a job for him. He doesn't like it. He doesn't want to kill people. He doesn't want to harm anyone. But also, like, this is what he does. There's a way out of it. You go into this knowing that you could easily die, that the people you're with could easily die. He's already lost two of his best friends. I mean, that's the thing. These guys they're a crew. They've been tight forever. And I think, particularly, he's got to know with Jem, like, this guy's going out like this, whether it's in front of me or in some other situation, it's got to happen. Like, there's no way that guy grows old and lives, any kind of normal life. So, yeah, I think he makes the right choice here. And I think it's on brand and in character. And, like, as much as they do have this kind of brotherly love for each other, there's almost this like distance between them. Like, I think maybe it's that, like, he knows because he's so much smarter than Jem that like, this is happening either way. So what good am I going to do if I sacrifice myself for him, or I try to, shoot my way out of this for him? It's not going to do us any good really anyway. He'd probably want this for me anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of
right. Yeah. I think that's probably the vibe, right? It's like, I don't think Renner wants, I think Jem wants Dougie to die. Right. And that's pretty much the only ending right here. Right.
Yeah.
Is that they're going to die.
A nice moment kind of just based on what you're saying, though, or just kind of connected to that, where he gets into a police car because he's dressed as a cop and that's the thing to do at this moment. And he just kind of slowly backs away. And Affleck, this is like some of his best acting in the movie, because you could tell he wants to be emotional about this, but he can't. And there's this like little, subtle kind of thing where you could tell he's really, really upset, but he's also, very carefully backing up the car, don't attract attention. And he just kind of gets away. And it's not this big moment. It's just this quiet little thing where, we kind of have to read his face a little bit. And I think it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that little moment too, where again, it's really good editing. When he turns the car and there's that little look from Hamm.
Yeah.
Where he's like something, but he's like, no, okay, whatever. Like,
we'll get him next time.
Yeah. I don't even think he's thinking like that's Dougie. I think he's just sort of like, it's so the way that Dougie pulls away is so calm and slow, right? That I don't even think he's even clocking like, oh, this must be the other guy we're chasing. Right. I just like that. Just like the way it's edited, I like the way it's performed, all that stuff. So,
see, I might have read that wrong. I thought he knew.
No, because why? There's plenty of cops around. He could have been like that guy, and they would have shot the car out. You know what I mean?
Like halfway gone. I don't know. Like the
I just don't
space
think
isn't established super well. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Hamm just seems like the kind of guy who's like, well, I'll figure it out later. That doesn't seem like his vibe the entire movie. He seems pretty like, not really biding his time type of guy. He was like a dog, going after a bone for most of the movie. The next. So like the only scenes we have left.
There's a lot of this movie left.
Well, there's like 3 major scenes left. Not even major scenes. There's 3 big scenes. He goes back to the florist.
Yeah, I love this.
And this is great. I love that where he's like, I was telling you, some guy, come here, I gotta tell you. Oh, and he just shoots him in the head. And then I love the way he kills, Fergus in that moment where they kind of shoot at each other.
From like
of course,
2 feet away.
Yeah, Affleck is all armored up, so it doesn't matter. Like, I like how he kind of checks. He's like, no, I'm okay. And then, we don't see it, but he shoots him in the balls basically because he said, about castrating him or whatever.
Horses, yeah. I'm gonna clip your balls, whatever. Yeah.
And there's that little moment where you see like the FBI office, and he's like, Fergus and that guy are dead, and they're like, and they're sort of like, oh, okay. And then we get the scene where Affleck calls Rebecca Hall's character, and in a very born identity, born supremacy kind of way, is calling her, but like looking at her through like binoculars basically, and can see all the cops in her house. And it's this moment, right, where he's basically trying to see like how loyal is she, essentially, right?
Yeah,
like,
is she gonna sell me out or not?
Is she gonna sell me out or not? And you can see he's disappointed at first until she says the thing about her sunny days, and then you see the big the smile on his face. Or whatever.
There's a real Wahlberg. There's a real Wahlberg line reading in this scene where, something about where she says, "Oh, come over to my house." It's like, I don't think that'd be very good for me.
Yeah.
Like, man, maybe he would have worked in this movie. Is that not the greatest sketch ever?
It's such a good sketch.
Give me apples, right? I produce Entourage.
Yeah. The old woman. And,
God, I love that scene. What? No.
What? No. So
next week on Wahlberg chat.
Yeah. But where he's like, okay, obviously, like, he's going to be okay or whatever. And this also helps her because it doesn't seem like she sold them out, like the cops out. And so she's going to be in the clear, right? Then he puts on another costume. He puts on the T, like the Boston Transit, like conductor dude.
Jumps
whatever.
On a bus. Yeah. Now he's part of the public transportation system.
Yeah. And he's walking like, sir, you got to go off the street. He's like, that's all right, I'm just going to work. And I love this idea, like, you put on a costume and like people are just like, okay, just leave him alone. He's going to.
Yeah. Well, I also like, kind of going back throughout the movie, right? Like they know people in Charlestown that have, their MTA employees, their police employees, their paramedics in town. They have the uniforms, everything. It's like, you can borrow that to commit a robbery or get away from the police or something. Like there's just this, this kind of brotherhood of criminals, like thieves. That's fun.
Absolutely. And then we talked about the scene right where they realize that he's not coming, and Hamm kind of figures it out, right? I love that he's our sunny days or whatever, He also finds the note on his car that says "Go fuck yourself."
It's a little bit overkill, but I like it.
Yeah. And then he gives it to the lawyer or whatever, and he says, "This is for you" or whatever.
I really like that. That's a perfect Jon Hamm moment.
Yeah. I do really like the idea that he gets like they're blocking all. They're like we blocked Logan, we've blocked the train stations, whatever. And the way Affleck gets around it, he's planned for it, right? He becomes a bus driver basically, and just drives this bus to this station outside of Boston. Hops on the T or whatever, or the Amtrak, and just goes, right? I really would have liked it if the movie ended there. Like that could have been a fine ending to the movie.
So, just sort of reading about what this was supposed to be. So this ending was kind of like studio mandated, test audience mandated, where in the book, I believe, he ends up somewhere with Claire and dies in her arms from his, I guess, wounds incurred, I think, when he shoots it out with Fergus.
Okay.
Because we don't see, I mean, that scene could play out either way. We do get that moment where he checks the vest and sees that he's okay. But I mean, there's, that's how movies work, right? You're wearing a vest, but there's that one shot that gets through, and that's the
totally
one that gets you. But then we get the Shawshank ending. The last 30 seconds of this, I could totally live without.
It's just like, it's just not needed. And we get the voiceover,
I got a lot to atone for. Yeah, you fucking do.
Yeah, dude.
I got a long road ahead of me.
Why don't you go to, if you really want to tell, you should go to fucking jail, man. You didn't, it's not like you were just like, oh,
we get this nice house right on the water down in Florida. I was like, oh, sucks to be you.
And I'm bearded Ben Affleck now.
Just Shawshanking it.
Staring out the water.
Yeah.
He leaves all that money for her, and she uses it to like put ice on the rink or whatever.
Yeah, gifted his mother's name, which I like.
Yeah, exactly.
Doris McCrae.
And, of course, like, I don't like to get bogged down in like, well, how could this realistically work? But he left her like millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden there's like they know that she's connected to him. All of a sudden, the place that she works, they get a random $1 million anonymous gift or whatever to build an ice rink. Like, come on.
And I took that as like that happens years later, but still, they're interested, right? They're not going to just drop this case.
So, that's all a little bit.
Killed a ton of cops.
Yeah. I think obviously it would have been more interesting if Affleck either gets arrested or dies, like we talked about, or even if they ended him getting away, I would have been okay with it. But like, I don't need to see him, at the Florida house or whatever, having an idyllic life. It doesn't look like he's a Tony for anything. It looks like he's just having a good life with the money he stole, so I don't really get that sort of vibe. Like you said, it's studio mandated.
It feels a little unfair, right? Like, as much as I like this character, like Christopher, Blake Lively's character, she's like, well, you're going to go have a better life. You could be a different person. I want to be a different person too. And like, I feel like she is owed that a lot more than he is, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's also she's a drug mule and a criminal as well.
I'm not saying she's a prize either, but like, she didn't kill any cops.
No, she deserved, obviously she did. Yes. She deserves to have a good life as well.
She's stuck in Charlestown and he just has this like pretty sweet place on the river down south somewhere.
And he's, with the intention, like he will see Rebecca Hall's character again, so it's like, I obviously said it's studio mandated. So that makes a lot of sense. It just feels like,
I'm not sure about studio mandated. I know they shot the original ending where he dies, meets back up with her and dies in her arms. And then they ran it by test audiences. And I don't know if it was Affleck because he was instrumental in the production of this.
Well, of course, but he still has to listen to the studio. I mean, it's not like he had the power to not listen to the studio.
But I mean, I do think it undercuts some of the
it does,
the noir aspects of this movie.
It also just doesn't feel like the rest of the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's one of the dings against it, I think. But I think overall, like, just a wildly entertaining movie.
Yeah.
A movie that I could watch, on any rainy Sunday and feel good about the fact that I watched it. It's just one of those movies. And
see, I don't do that, right? But you were saying that about like watching this on cable. Like I don't ever watch television. Just put on the TV.
Well, it doesn't happen anymore. I meant like at another time.
That you can still do that, and this movie probably is on TBS. I don't know if there even is a TBS anymore. But like having seen this for the first time in 14 years or whatever, it's like I wish I had gotten more familiar with this movie. Like this is something that I could watch over and over and over again. I just didn't really.
Yeah, now it'd be like, oh, I'm looking through Netflix and I'm like, oh, The Town. I'll put that on. I think it's definitely that type of movie. And we'll talk about this as the shape of Ben Affleck's career develops over the next couple of movies. Obviously, neither of us have seen Live by Night, right? And we'll talk about this more next week. But I think Argo winning Best Picture was probably the worst thing that could have happened to his film career, his directing career. because when we talk about Argo, I think very similar to this movie, it's the same kind of movie, right? It's the same type of like, kind of like almost cozy, like, Saturday afternoon movie that this is, but got all this praise. And then I think what's going to happen with Live by Night is we're going to see him taking himself too seriously, is my guess. And that's why that movie probably fails in a lot of places, right? So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see how that actually develops. That's my thesis, though, on what's going to happen. And then I feel like Air goes back to more this zone where he's like, no, I'm just going to make like a fun little movie that people can enjoy with some good performances, and stuff like that. So
it's a shame though, because like he is very, very good at this crime noir type stuff, and he's not really doing this anymore. And it's almost like he kind of just like said everything he had to say in the genre with these first two movies. And so Live by Night, which is kind of the same thing. I mean, I've read the book. I get a sense of what it is. It is kind of a more sweeping kind of story. I mean, I feel like he's the right guy to make that movie. And that's why I suggested the series in the first place. Like, how could he have messed that up? But I think it's just like, he got all that out of his system with these two. And it's like, where do you go from there? And then, like you said, the Oscar win for Argo is especially that. Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
What is another Ben Affleck prestige movie look like?
Yeah. My favorite film critic, David Sims from The Atlantic, said in his letterbox review of Live by Night, this movie should have been 45 minutes longer and starred literally anyone else. It's what he says in his review of it. But there's stuff there, is what he says about Live by Night. So there's a couple sequences in these that are pretty fantastic. So there's that.
Like the fact that he cast himself in that movie, like the character in the book is young. That's kind of like his thing. So Affleck is like 50 at that point.
I don't know if he's 50 yet, but he's in his late 40s, probably. Yeah, probably. Yes.
So I'm not looking forward to seeing him play a 22-year-old, which the character is through most of the story.
Yeah. So we'll see about that movie. I think very interesting director. These two, I mean, I feel the same way watching these two movies 15 years later that we've watched as I felt in that time, which I was like, Affleck's a guy. Like, he can do this. Like, he can make these kind of movies. And maybe he should only just make movies, only be in movies that he makes, because that's only time that people seem to be okay with them. But this is the point where we are in like the second renaissance of Ben Affleck in this moment, right? This is the moment, then Argo followed up, and then we got Gone Girl. Like, we are in the moment where people are like, oh, we're back, and then we're going to go through another dip again. And then we're back again, a little bit more back again now than we were before, right? So it's like this. And then I think we're out again. We came back, we went out, we came back, we went back, we're going out, and we're out again. But, it's just a really fascinating career for this sort of trajectory to follow. Next time we'll talk about Argo, the Best Picture winning Argo, which is crazy. That it's the Best Picture winner of that year.
Hollywood's so up its own ass. It loves movies about movies. So.
It does love movies, but it was just one of those funny things where the narrative and we'll talk about this next week. We're talking about probably too much this week, but the narrative around that was like weird because he didn't get nominated for Best Director. But it got nominated for Best Picture. So everyone was like, this must be sort of like a fringe Best Picture nominee, right? It's like one of those ones where it's like, it's not gonna, because there's 10, it's gonna be in the list, but there's no chance of winning. And then it won. And I remember the narrative around them was like, wow, it's big vindication for Ben Affleck, right? That he didn't get nominated and it won. And then after that, I think once again, I just feel like he can't get out of his own way a lot of the time. And this is one of the times where it happened, where he just can't get out of his own way. After this,
well, there's always I don't know, like he gets to a certain level and then there's just a backlash, and I don't know if it's always deserved. It's an Affleck. It's not always
deserved. Very good. But Renner gets nominated for an Oscar for this movie. He was the big sort of like breakout of this movie and its success.
And this is 2 years after The Hurt Locker, so he's still kind of riding the wave of that.
He's in that zone. He's in the zone where he has become the guy that Hollywood is like, is this the guy? Is this the guy that's going to now he can be the lead?
Reboot the Bourne franchise with this guy.
Yeah. Let's have
him take over for Tom Cruise Mission Impossible.
Exactly. And people are like, no, this is not what we want from Jeremy Renner.
We'll stick with our original Tom Cruise.
Yes. Everyone's like, we like Jeremy Renner, but like, not for this, And he's good in the Mission Impossible movies that he's in too. He's good in them, but it's just one of the things where it's like, this was never going to be the thing. He was never going to be the guy, And the Bourne thing
fell on him. Man, that's
oh my God, that's crazy that happened.
Yeah,
and this is right around the time
like
too
ever
where
since that happens, I just leave the snow.
yeah,
I don't
2
wanna
years
get negative.
later, 2 years later he's in Avengers.
Yeah.
You know, and that starts a whole other part of his career, which probably is the most unpredictable thing you could have guessed when he was in the Hurt Locker in 2008, right? That he would be a Marvel guy for 15 years after, after that.
Can I ask, how was the Hawkeye series? I saw a
Good, I
little bit
liked
of it. It looked pretty good.
there is like a couple of, not to diverge too much, but there's a couple of tiers of those shows, right? There is like the ones that are really great, I think, which are like the Loki seasons are really great. The two sort of Wanda.
I was gonna say WandaVision. I haven't watched all of them, but the ones I've seen or followed through with, WandaVision was good.
WandaVision, and then the Agatha All Along that just finished, which is in that kind of universe, right? It's like a spinoff of that, also really great. And then
Yeah, I've seen enough.
Hawkeye is the next level down to me, which is just like really good fun performances. It's mostly carried by performances and tone, and it gets like a lot of those shows, like half of them are really, really, you're like, oh my god, this is great, and then they kind of don't know how to land the plane a little bit. But it's notable because what I like about those shows a lot of the time is they lets these actors who are just great world-class actors, who are sort of relegated to having like the 7th or 8th lead in any of those movies, get to just be the center of them for a little while. And it's like,
yeah, like, oh yeah, I like Hawkeye. I like that character. I like him as that character. I'm not a huge comic book guy, movie guy, but like when it's a character I enjoy and an actor I enjoy, like I watched the first episode of Hawkeye and I liked it, and I should finish it.
Renner's great in it.
It's almost Christmas. I should watch it.
Exactly. Renner's great in it. The only thing about that though is he's great in it, but he is like so upstaged
by Haley
Steinfeld.
Yeah,
because Haley Steinfeld is like on fire on that show.
And she kind of takes over even the first episode. I was like, oh, this is gonna be her show now, which is fine. It's
really her show. And then Florence Pugh comes into the show about halfway through, and then it's like Renner just can't compete. And the two of them, like Steinfeld and her together, Pugh and Steinfeld together, it's like charisma explosion. You know what I mean? It's just like you're just watching these. You're like, oh, this is the future of like movies right here. Like these two people.
Sorry, Jeremy. Up to the side again. Yeah.
But I mean, he gets a lot of time in the show, and he gets to be like more like the Fraction Aja Hawkeye, which
like
is the one
that which I really like. That's one of the only comics like runs that I've read in the past 20 years, probably.
You're very in a lot of company with that. That's one of those runs that people that broke through. Because
absolutely for us, casual fans.
Well, it's because people who read comics, we know that the normies can't really take the crazier stuff.
Yeah,
so when something like that comes around, we're like, and our non-comic reading friends are like, is there a comic I should read? It just became one of the ones that people would say, like, you should read Hawkeye. Like, just read Hawkeye. It's great, So
it's almost exactly how it happened for me. Although
I'm sure.
Wasn't a friend. I don't think I don't have good friends for those kind of recommendations. I think I saw it in a magazine or something.
Right, or whatever. It's that's what it is. It's one of those runs. Every once in a while you get one of those where they break through into the mainstream in a way. I mean, solid movie. Really enjoyed it. To me, it's like it's like a 4-star movie to me. 4 out of 5.
Agreed. Yeah.
To me, some stuff I think is a little bit lacking, like we talked about, but overall a great experience. So that's it. Next week we're gonna do Argo, and could talk about a fun Alan Arkin performance up in there.
Sure is.
Got some John Goodman up in there. Got a lot of good character actors going on in that film. And I got some fun like personal stories about that because my grandfather and my mother were in Iran when all that shit was happening. Basically. God. Yeah.
Who plays them in the movie?
They're not in the no, they weren't like but they did know some of the art, some of the art that's in the person that's an artist in that movie. She's like the artist. My grandfather had art by that person in his house because he knew her.
Or is it like, I'll tell you what, I mean, I don't remember. I remember liking Argo a lot. I didn't think it was like the best picture movie it should have been, but like the fact that that's a true story is insane to me.
It is.
And from what I've read is pretty close to what happened.
That's as far as absolutely. So we'll talk about that. There's some things I have some very I haven't seen it since 2012 when it came out either. I have some pretty sharp memories of a couple of the scenes, especially like the airport scene at the end when they're trying to leave.
That's about all I remember. Yeah, it's another one like The Town. I remember really liking it, but I just didn't follow through with it.
And I think it's one of those movies too that, you know, when you win Best Picture and some people don't feel like maybe you deserve to win Best Picture, you get a lot of post-Oscar hate, right? And it really pushes the vibe of the movie down. Sometimes that's justified.
Like
Crash.
It's got a Crash effect, but it's such a more fun movie. Like
exactly.
What I remember about both of those, it definitely is something I'd watch right now, much before I watch Crash.
It's not a Crash or a Green Book, right? It's not in that like grouping of movies.
Like Green Book.
Nick.
There's some nice Italian American stuff in Green Book.
Viggo Mortensen, the most Italian American man of all.
His name is Viggo.
Anyway, that's gonna do it for the show for this week. Follow us on Substack, intrepidfilmographers.com. You can subscribe to the podcast there. Rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. And we will see you next time. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, everybody who's listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.